Hi everyone, how's it going? Uh, I don't know. A couple of subject matters came up in my head that I wanted to talk about. The first one was white privilege, and the second one was the mental health profession. And I will probably talk about white privilege first because it kind of segues into the mental health thing. So, people like to act like white people don't go through anything. They like to act like white people don't have any problems, or they've never suffered, or they've never gone through anything. And for me, that's counterproductive because it actually denies the root of racism. I don't say this because I feel like, white folk are underrepresented. That's certainly not true. But I feel like acknowledging that suffering is universal is absolutely crucial to understanding racism, because like every other human being on this planet, of every other race, white people are cowards. All human beings are cowards. So why would white people be any different, especially when this world has told them that they could be rewarded through their cowardice and through their ignorance? So for me, it's like, for example, there was this one thing that I saw on del Toro's, I think it's the Cabinet of Wonders or something like that. And the first episode was about this angry white guy feeling sorry for himself and basically trying to reverse everything that black people say to him. And I'm coming to a point, I promise. I'm coming to a point. He goes to give money to a black gentleman for the cabinet that he's buying or renting or something. And the black guy talks to this white guy about white anger, and then the white guy says to the black guy, well, can I say black anger? And the fact that the black guy didn't say anything, it wasn't the fact that the white guy tried to like pathetically throw the talking points of marginalized people black in the black man's face. That's not actually what pissed me off. What pissed me off is that the black man just sat there outraged and didn't say anything. And my thing is this, right? You can say black anger, because the whole thing surrounding picnics where white families made a day out of hanging black people in America, that wasn't that long ago. And at the time where this whole thing was set, like it was set in the times of George Bush Sr., right? When he was president. So white families making a picnic out of hanging black people, that was only a few decades ago. Black people getting the right to vote in America, that was only a few decades ago. White people didn't just used to hang black people or burn down villages or burn people up in churches. White folk also used to cannibalize black people, feed black babies to alligators. And that is just like a small list of the things that have been done by white people to black people in America. Not to mention burning down black communities, thriving black communities that found a way to thrive during the Depression. Those black communities could have helped everyone if they played their cards right. But no, because they were black and thriving, burn that shit down. So my response would have been, if you want to call it black anger, go right ahead. Because unlike white anger, which comes from the lack of acknowledgement that your own race caused you the pain that you're going through right now, at least our anger can be legitimized and can be kind of historically justified. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's the difference between our anger and yours. Our anger comes from what the world did to us and what the world took from us. Your anger is based on what your people took from you. Nothing more. And I mean nothing more than that. Now, I understand the history of the Moors, and I understand the history of Mansa Musa. human history is very complex and messy. You can't just wrap it up in a neat little bow and call it a day. No, all of us have done wrong. We're all human beings. But the thing is that the more, human beings are cowards in the first place. It doesn't matter what race you are. But when you add a certain amount of privilege to that, the privilege that comes from delusion and comes from conquering and comes from violence and comes from hatred, that cowardice increases. So instead of taking it out on the people that you really should be taking it out on, you take it out on other races who have made it up out of the mud that you threw in their path. That's cowardice and that's ignorance. Now, for me, again, to say that white people haven't been through anything, it's childish, it's wrong, and it undermines the argument of racism as a whole. White people suffer plenty. But this is the difference. With white folk, it was their own white folk doing that to them. Because with the right hand, their governments, their business people, their corporations were patting their little heads and saying, oh, wait, you're so much better than those darkies. You're so much better than, those brown people. You're so much better. Just patting their little heads. Especially if they were blonde and blue-eyed, just patting their little heads saying, you're better than them. You're better than them. With the right hand, just patting their little heads. And then with the left hand, they're stealing from them, leaving them to starve to death and freeze to death, leaving them without jobs, without hope, without prospects, leaving them having to travel out of their own countries or out of their own cities to be able to find work, some of them away from their families, leaving them without contraception, so that God knows how many white women were dying during childbirth. So we can't say in our heart of hearts that just because white privilege exists, it means white people haven't been through anything. But the problem with privilege is that those who are privileged in society, not just through resources, but through the mindset. The problem is that when they look at their own problems and they look at the suffering that they have, they got to look at their own back door. They can't look at us. They can't look at us. They can't look at Asian people. They can't look at Latin people. And it's the same with it's the same with any race that has any privilege over anyone else. You can only look at yourselves. You cannot look at the people you marginalized, because it took that marginalization for you to even be where you are. And the way power works is that you don't attain power through genuine love for one another. Power is a hierarchy built through strong and powerful rivalries. So the reason why people have privilege in this world is not because they love each other. It's not because they really value each other. It's because there is a steep uphill climb in any race or any sexual orientation of privilege or any gender of privilege. The only reason why they have that privilege is not through love, it's through fear and competition and blood. So yes, white privilege does not exempt white people from suffering. Everybody suffers. Humanity suffers. We are also cowards. We are also selfish. We are also petty. We are also dishonest. Every single person of every single race. But it plays out differently in accordance to not only how your biology is set up, but how your environment is set up. With regards to white folk, the way those very, very human traits play out is that in order to maintain their privilege, it takes a certain amount of delusion. It takes a certain amount of not minding your business. It takes a certain amount of hatred. And once again, that privilege is sustained. It seems like it's sustained through money, but it's not sustained through money. It's sustained through telling people that their competitiveness or their antisocial tendencies makes them more superior than others. So it's like what this world does is it kind of makes out like your sickness is your virtue. It makes out like if you have an anti-personality disorder that makes you compete with others or cause others pain, then you're better than others. And when you really break down what the privilege is that certain people have in this world, it's not the privilege to be richer than someone else. It's not the privilege to be better than someone else. It's the privilege of being able to harm other people who are different to you. That's what marks privilege. That's what marks privilege. So I'm really tired of this argument that, you know, I'm really tired of this argument that somehow black folk are just feeling sorry for ourselves. We're not. But we're doing the precise opposite. Everything that this world tells victims to do, tell people about your experiences, hold the guilty to account. That's exactly what we've been doing. We've been doing what society has expected of us. And it's the same with anyone brown as well. They've been doing the same thing, doing exactly what society has told us to do. When you're a victim of suffering, you don't stay silent. Because if you stay silent, then people say, well, why are you bringing this up now? Why didn't you bring it up then? We're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and we're called victims over it. We're minding our business. We're focusing on our own selves. We're holding people accountable who have done wrong. Only in a world like this could you do everything that you're supposed to be doing, and this world turns around and tells you that you're in the wrong for doing it. Meanwhile, people who have privilege over you are not minding their business, talking shit, making sure at every moment that they think you're inferior. For what reason? What reason? Why do you need to tell people every 5 minutes that you think you're superior to them? What is going on in your mind where you feel the need to do that? What is going on in your mind when you feel the need to do that? When you feel the need to remind people every 5 minutes that you think you're superior? You clearly don't think you're superior, and you clearly know you're not. But that delusion, in order to achieve power in the material world, you need a certain amount of delusion, you need a certain amount of fear, and you need a certain amount of hatred. And clearly you're hanging on to that because the truth is just like the sun. They sit down on you, they'll burn the fuck out of you. Why do you need to remind people every 5 minutes that you think you're superior? What is going on in your life, in your psyche, where you feel the need to do that? You are human just like everyone else. So what makes you feel like you need to do that every 5 minutes? And then when people hold you to account, like society tells people that they should do, you want to turn around and accuse people of being victims. Listen, if you don't want to like us, you don't have to like us. That was never black people's problem. That was never anybody's problem. The problem was not that you didn't like us. People have the right to like or dislike whoever they want. It's not a fucking, oh my God. People have the right to like or dislike whoever they want to. It's just that you are spending so much time trying to stamp out the things that you don't like that you're not making room for the things and the people that you do like. And you're wondering why your life is fucking miserable. All you ever think about is how people you don't like, for reasons that are completely irrational, are flaunting their happiness, flaunting their talent, flaunting their existence in front of your face. Nobody ain't flaunting anything. It's you that is focusing primarily on what and who you do not like. And then you want to blame other people for that, for existing. No, it's you. You're not grateful for the things that you have. You're not grateful for your life. You're not grateful for the people around you. And everything that you do is characterized by dislike, by hatred, and by the need to feel superior to someone else. You are human. Get the fuck over it. You don't owe anybody to like anybody. You don't owe me that. You don't owe anybody that. Like, black people are not owed being liked. That's the fucking truth. We're not owed being liked. Asian people are not owed being liked. The Latin community are not owed being liked. White people are not owed being liked. Nobody is owed to be liked. But what we should be able to do is we should be able to walk down the street without being bothered by anybody. That's what we should be able to do. We should be able to get on with our goddamn lives without having to worry about whether somebody's going to hate us or not. We should be able to do that. We should be able to sing, dance, laugh, get on with our business. We should be able to conduct our business without being charged 3 times the rent in 1 year. That's what we should be able to do. We should be able to have businesses. We should be able to have families. We should be able to have communities with people who like us. We should be able to have that. Leave us the fuck alone. If you want to hate us, cool. But accept your privilege the way it is. Accept that you have the privilege to bully and harm others. Accept that. Leave us the fuck alone if you don't like us. Just leave us alone. And stop accusing us of being like you. While we're on the subject, stop accusing us of being like you. We're not like you. Just stop it. Like I said, we're all human. We're all petty, dishonest, and cowardly. But our pettiness, our dishonesty, our cowardice is not the same as yours. Stop acting like it is. If you hate us, leave us the fuck alone. Just leave us the fuck alone. Focus on yourselves and focus on what you love. Unless you're coming to the realization that all of those things are so empty that the only thing that gives you even a shred of meaning is the thing that you fucking hate. That's what privilege is. It's not the privilege to have more materially. It's not as simple as that. The privilege is the privilege to hate. The privilege to create systemic injustices and get away with it. That's what privilege is. It's injustice. It's the ability to be your worst self and get away with it more than the next person because of the color of your skin or the way your genitals are set up or the way your sexuality is set up. That's all that privilege is. Take that privilege, use it towards championing people and things that you do like. Leave us alone. Stop fucking with us. I said that was a speech on white privilege, but really that was just me ragging on white racists. And not even just white racists, racists of any kind, but that was just me ragging on racists, basically. It wasn't me ragging on, like, it wasn't me actually making a point about privilege. It was just me ragging on racist people. But now that I've spoken about that, I've got to speak about the mental health profession. Now, as you know, my Daryl, my partner, he's been speaking out against medication injuries and things like that. And it kind of made me realize everything that I've been dealing with the mental health profession. It kind of made me realize how dangerous the mental health profession always was. And it actually makes me realize how much more dangerous it will become in the future, given the advent of right-wing politics. Because I ragged on racists. But the thing about racism is that, or any type of bigotry, it's only a matter of time before the psychiatric profession comes back into it. Now, the problem that I have with the mental health profession is that the definitions of mental health are so broad now, and they're getting broader all the time. There are people making talking points on trans people, how trans people have a mental disorder. And it doesn't seem like much now, but what's happening is that first it was anybody who was emotional and passionate. Then it became about anybody who was eccentric. Then it became about anybody who believed that the government was corrupt. It's only a matter of time before that extends onto the trans community and then the gay community, and then basically anybody who isn't Christian or anybody who doesn't subscribe to the religions of the Western world. Like, it's only a matter of time, because of the way mental health is set up, it's only a matter of time before the definitions of mental illness and the definitions of mental dysfunction starts to widen, and all the shit that I talked about with regards to racism before, however messily I expressed that, it's actually paving a way for the definition of mental illness to be further broadened. And you know, a lot of people will be harsher than I am when it comes to the mental health profession. I would, you know, I don't want to continue to say that the mental health profession is a trafficking ring. But what I will say is that when you have a health profession that is largely speculative, that is very, very heavily focused on prescribing people with drugs that might, you know, that quell the symptoms, but might not have actually anything to do with what's causing the symptoms. So whilst we've got such a broad definition of what certain illnesses are and the diagnosis of certain illnesses, and whilst we've got such a keen interest in drugging people or medicating people, not for the purpose of curing them, but for the purpose of treating them and creating other side effects to treat, as long as that is going on, it means that whilst the mental health profession itself is not a trafficking ring, like I said, it makes way for trafficking victims to be introduced through the system, and it makes a way for those who are genuinely trafficking victims, genuinely abuse victims. It means that whatever abuse they've gone through, if they decide to speak out about it, they've been drugged so much, they've been put through the system so much, that when the time comes for them to actually talk about the experiences that they've gone through, their ability to give evidence in court is mitigated, because there are so many trafficking victims who have been through this system, filtered through this system. So, you know, and that's one worrying part. The other worrying part was what Daryl was talking about when he was talking about how the medications, the side effects from the medications are unacknowledged deliberately. They're deliberately unacknowledged. You get the side effects on a little pack. Sure, you get the side effects on the notes, but at the end of the day, there are people who are largely non-violent that are forced to take these medications anyway, in spite of what the side effects are telling you. And when you as a patient talk about the side effects of these medications, you talk about the side effects of these drugs, you're ignored. And you're saying, well, you got to take it because you got psychosis. It's like, many people have psychosis not just through genetics, but through extreme stress, trauma from abuse. And instead of those things being acknowledged, you know, at most, right, the abuse that causes mental health, the only type of abuse that's actually acknowledged is, how do I put this? The only type of abuse that's actually acknowledged are the abuse that comes from your parents. But the outside world is so abusive in and of itself that the trauma that piles on top of a person is unavoidable. And it's only a select few people that can actually deal with the amount of shit that this world piles on top of you unscathed. Now, I've had experience with the mental health profession, and I've had experience with trauma, right? And a lot of people say that, you know, I've had this occasion where constantly, in a bid to try to diminish everything that's happened to me and everything that's happening to me right now, the first question I will be asked is, what happened to you as a child? What happened to you as a child? What did your parents do? Now, if you're a parent, right, you know good and goddamn well that the influence that a child has from the time they go to school, You are not the main influence anymore. The main influence is the school, the outside world, TV even, media even. You know damn well as a parent, you can do the best you can. But once that child gets into the outside world, they haven't just got to deal with other children, they've got to deal with other adults who pile trauma and abuse on top of that child. It's not just you anymore. It's not just you as a parent anymore. You as a parent can fuck your kids up. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying any of it. Okay? My parents certainly fucked me up. So I'm not denying any of that. But the world outside contributes to you being fucked up. It contributes, and that's just without targeting. That's just without trafficking. That's just without domestic violence. That's just without God knows how many other instances where vulnerable people find themselves in a really precarious position. Before we even get into the major crimes that this world inflicts on not innocent people, but relatively innocent people, right? Before we even get into the amount of crimes that this world inflicts on innocent people, we've got societal structures that are emphasized once again around competition, around suppressing your emotions, and around treating you like a fucking machine. That's just without trauma. That's just without trauma being the same to you. Let alone when you are marginalized. Fuck it, even when you're not marginalized, even when you're white, rich, and the type of person that everybody says nobody has any problems, even when you're like that, there are a pool of fucking piranhas surrounding you all the fucking time. Just as a normal human being, you've got so many other traumas that are stacked on top, stacked on top, stacked on top, stacked on top. As a child, you get bullied in school. The teachers gaslight you into fucking accepting it. You go to college, some people are raped in college, some people are sexually assaulted in college. Nothing is done about it. Some of them go through teachers bullying them and mistreating them. Nothing is done. Then you get to work. You spend most of your time at work. There's workplace harassment people don't do a goddamn thing about. Then you talk to the council, you talk to the people who are in authority. In the case of Jane Clift, you make one complaint to the council. Suddenly the councils put you on a fucking watch list. Unlawfully. So mental health will never talk about outside traumas. And let's talk about the outside trauma that mental health themselves cause. First of all, these hospitals are drastically understaffed. Second of all, not every person in the mental health profession actually cares about you. Some of them are dedicated to bullying you, to manhandling you, to roughing you up. That's more added trauma. On top of that, you're forced to take medications that you don't want to take. That's more added trauma. So in order for the mental health to function, they have to ignore all the external forces of trauma, or, not just your parents and not just your family, but it has to ignore all the other aspects of trauma that are systemically put in place to turn people into functioning depressives. And again, that's just without the targeting. That's just without the trafficking. That's just without domestic abuse. Add that shit in the mix, and then add police officers who are drastically understaffed. And even when they're not understaffed, they don't do a fucking thing but gaslight you about your pain. Mental health ignores all of that. So it is a speculative health field that only focuses on so-called root trauma. They don't focus on the trauma of the outside world, because then they'd have to include themselves. And the definition of being mentally ill is so broad, it can actually literally include people who might not have any mental illness at all, and who might just be very, very aware of how the world works. And the danger of that is that many trafficking victims and many abuse victims can be funneled through mental health, and not only have their evidence potentially diminished in court. Not only can they be rendered incompetent to the point where control over them can go back in the hands of their abusers, it can also involve some of these poor people being given drugs that they never needed in the first place, or that were never good for them in the first place, and they can end up being permanently damaged physically by these medications, which unfortunately is what happened to my partner. And what happened to me, you know, because I had medications too from the time I was very young. You know, I had a seizure and I was treated for epilepsy. And I'm convinced that some of the side effects of those drugs cause some of the problems that I have now that I really think about it. So the mental health profession is very dangerous. But the only reason why I tell mental health about my targeting and I tell them about what's going on is because A, I'm reckless as fuck. And I am reckless, I'm sorry. A, I'm reckless as fuck. And B, it's logged. So if I continue to talk to mental health or, you know, or health services about what's going on, all of those logs are being stored in case of these weapons actually being revealed, or, you know, them actually getting center stage. So if there comes a time where targeting has been revealed, or gang stalking has been revealed, or unlawful experimentation into, you know, into electronic weapons is ever revealed, it's right there on my notes. I said it from the beginning. And if there are any telltale injuries that come as a result of being fired with those electronic weapons, like I said, it's right there on my notes. I said it from the beginning. The doctors chose to ignore it. That's why I keep talking about it, because they were ignoring clear testimonies from a victim of unlawful experimentation. They clearly ignored it so that they could be able to peddle more drugs. And they knowingly put a trafficking victim through the system so that that trafficking victim can have their evidence diminished in court by diagnosing them as paranoid schizophrenic. That's why I keep talking about it, because every time I talk about it on my medical records, it is evidence, because the truth will come out eventually. And when it does, it's going to be stated on my medical records that I said it from the beginning, that this was being done to me. And that war crimes essentially were being committed. Because they really think about this, right? If you're a defense company and you're experimenting on the public, that's a war crime. I don't care what anyone says. That's a war crime, and that's a human rights abuse. Because what are these weapons being bred for? They're being bred for war, right? So if these weapons are being bred for war and they're being experimented on ordinary citizens, then that means war crimes have been committed. That means human rights abuse have been committed. Everything that is happening to TIs is against the Geneva Convention. That's why all of these things have to be shrouded and hidden through the medical profession, or the mental health profession. That's essentially what it's there for. It's not just there to keep you under control. It's also there so that it can diminish the admissibility of evidence from people who are victims, who have been telling the truth all along. That's what makes the mental health profession so dangerous. And the fact that there are people in the mental health profession who mean well, who think they can make a difference through that system, I'm sorry to say, that makes it even more dangerous, because you know there are people in that profession who genuinely care about their patients and who genuinely care about the people who are there and have a limited amount of resources to work with, but genuinely are holding on to hope that they can make a difference and they can make people well and they can get people the treatment they need and they can get people the help they need. You know there are people within that profession who are genuine people, good people who want to do what's right. But that makes it even worse because they're being lied to. they're being lied to or they're being blackmailed into doing everything that I said the mental health essentially does. Now, again, not all of them are good. Some of them are clear lunatics and bullies and cowards, but there are people within the mental health profession who really do mean us well. But they're a part of the problem, because if they have so much faith in the status quo, then really they're hindering everything that they're trying to do. But yeah, I'm going to leave a link with Daryl's campaign that he's been working on for a few months now. I'm going to leave that in the description in my YouTube video. In fact, I'm going to leave it in the description on my Facebook video, because I've got that on all channels. I've got that video on all channels on my social media. So I'm going to show you that. And yeah, again, what I said about white privilege in the beginning, that wasn't an opportunity for me to bash all white people as a whole. It's just the racist ones that are just clearly deluding themselves and clearly want to believe that they're victims when they're cowards like every other human being. So anyway, I gotta go. Peace and blessings. Mwah. My fellow TIs, I love you, race regardless, you know that. But I'm always going to tell the truth on this channel. And, you know, I know you guys are going to stay strong. I know this already. You guys are TIs. You've been doing it. So I love you so much. Peace and blessings. Mwah. Bye-bye. Hang on. Oh, shit. Hang on. Sorry, I didn't catch the comments. Belinda Givers said, yes, I agree. Belinda Givers says, sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't find your Instagram account this morning. I was just on it yesterday. I cannot find you in my following list anymore. Were you banned? Megan Phobia says, they are programmed, unfortunately. Megan Phobia says, I'm white, I wasn't offended, love you too. Oh, you see, those who get it, they get it. I love you. I love you too. All right. I'm going to look for my account, Belinda, and see if it's still there. But let's see what happens. It might be that the dummy accounts that were created were banned, but I'll look on my Instagram and see what's going on there. So I love you guys so much. Thanks to everyone for watching, and thanks to everyone for commenting on the video. You guys are incredible. I love you, my fellow TRs. Third time's a charm. Bye-bye.